Hello, and thank you for joining us today in our studies of First Kings. Today we're in First Kings chapter 21, and in this chapter you have a situation that arises with Ahab and his desire to buy a vineyard. The problem is that Naboth doesn't want to sell his vineyard. And Naboth is actually under no obligation to sell this vineyard because it is his inheritance. It has been handed down to his family for generations. It was given to them when they came into the land of Israel. And so he is under no obligation by law to sell it, and yet Ahab wants it. And so let's look at some of the impacts and some of the consequences of the actions of the individuals involved as we look at lessons from this chapter today. Let's start with Ahab himself. Ahab is going to react like a spoiled brat. When Naboth tells him he will not give him his vineyard, Ahab, it's described in verse number 4, goes up into his house sulking, and he goes to his room, he lays down on his bed, he turns his face to the wall, and he refuses to eat, like a 5-year-old. Ahab is going to have this great big pity party because big bad Naboth will not give him what he wants. And so then Jezebel comes in. And Jezebel comes in and she says she's going to make everything okay for Ahab not to worry about it. And sure enough, she is going to do that. But she is going to do that in a very underhanded and very Jezebel-like fashion. You know, Jezebel is a bit like a bull in a china shop when she sets her mind to do something. She's been one who's killed the prophets because she doesn't like the word of God. She has been one who has done all kinds of wicked and evil deeds, and this is going to be no exception. Jezebel is going to work underhandedly to make sure that Naboth's vineyard becomes available. She's not going to immediately take it away from Naboth. No, instead, she's just going to kill Naboth. She's not going to do it herself. What she does is she sends letters to the elders of the city where Naboth lives, and she tells them that they are to proclaim a fast, they are to seat Naboth among the people, they are to pay 2 men then, or 2 scoundrels as they're called in the text, to bear witness against him, saying he has blasphemed God and the king, which in and of itself is interesting since she has done everything she can to wipe out the worship and the acclaim of God in Israel. And then they're going to take him out and stone him. Everything goes exactly according to plan. Naboth, who has done nothing wrong, is going to come in unsuspectingly to this feast. He's going to be given a place of high honor, and then he's going to be lied about and summarily executed for it. And Ahab has his vineyard. Now, if the account stops there, it is truly an account of injustice, of greed, of the overuse and overreaching nature of power. And yet the story doesn't end there. Because God, in the final sections, through Elijah, is going to step into the matter. And beginning in verse number 20, Elijah is going to come and he's going to speak to Ahab. And he is going to state to Ahab that I have found you because you have sold yourself to do evil in the sight of the Lord. This goes squarely on Ahab's shoulders. Now, even though Ahab is not the one who either A, perpetrated the plot, or B, enacted the plot to relieve Naboth of his vineyard, number one, he is the king, but number two, he is also the one whose fit of baby-like resentment caused this particular escapade. And God is going to hold him accountable. Now, in his fear, after Elijah comes to him, he is going to do the one thing that he has not done the entire time he has been king over Israel. He is going to humble himself before God. And God is going to make one little change to what it is that he says through Elijah. It's not going to happen in his lifetime. His family, his seed line is not going to be cut off in his lifetime. It will be in the lifetime of his son. But Jezebel's judgment is going to remain. I want you to notice what is said in verse 25. There was no one like Ahab, it says, who sold himself to do wickedness in the sight of the Lord. Ahab sold himself. Ahab sold himself to do wickedness, and he sold himself into destruction. But you know why he did it? The other half of the verse tells us. Because Jezebel, his wife, stirred him up. You know, who we spend time around, who we allow to have an influence in our lives, who we make the most important in our lives, it's going to say a lot about the choices that we make in our lives. And when you look in 1 Kings chapter 21, there are a lot of different attributes and a lot of different levels to the account that takes place here. You have an innocent man who is going to be put to death for no other reason than the greed of a king. You have a judgment that is going to come based upon the actions and many other actions leading up to this. But this is going to be the final straw for God. You have a conniving, evil woman who is willing to say and do whatever it takes to get what she wants, and she will get what is coming to her. But you also have a recognition that in the end, God's will triumph. These are some of the things I've pulled from 1 Kings 21, and I hope they're beneficial to you. Next time we'll come back and we will begin examining 1 Kings chapter 22. But until then, have a great day.